like to talk about medium-term outlook using the tool of scenarios. And I've been talking about 3 scenarios. One is status quo, which we seem to all agree we are living. But we are not yet at an irreversible point in the destination out of status quo. So, for instance, what will transition politics do to the reforms? What will reforms endure beyond the complications of power, etc.? Will social pressures drive a reversal of reforms? You've spoken about reforms about people. As elections draw nearer, those become more powerful arguments. So we are living status quo. We seem, and I do commend the administration, we have made a determined effort to depart from the status quo. But because of these complications of policy making, which Dr. Agagab will probably know better than any of us, because of the complications of policy making and execution in a complicated polity like Nigeria, you don't know what trade-offs will be made in the future. Where might we be going? There are seeds of both the 2 other scenarios in our present condition. So there are seeds of Nigeria rising, which is the optimistic, good scenario that we should all hope for.
When we talk about poverty, how is it defined? Who defines it? What are the peculiarities of an African society? Bring it home to Nigeria. Now, for those who define poverty for us, they consider the fact that you are poor if you earn below a certain threshold. But we know in Africa, we don't live by what we earn. There is the element that in economics we call transfer payments, where because we are friends, I can dash you money when you have a need. Means you didn't work to earn it, but that is part of our culture. So in which case, measuring poverty by what I earn is a misnomer in an African society. Now you should be looking at what people spend, okay? And that brings the conversation also into the informal sector, which we often ignore when we do our outlook. And a whole lot is happening in the informal sector in terms of jobs, in terms of income, in terms of capacity to spend, in talking about disposable income, all right? Now, when you factor all of this together, and then the fact that our population, yes, heavily weighed in the youth side, but also digitally savvy. So that gives you now a future view in terms of outlook in another 5 years. What will become of this economy? I see an economy that will be more prosperous than where we are today. But just like my colleagues have said, we now look at specific sectors and deepen reforms in those key sectors. A lot is happening with hard infrastructure, the roads, the railways, even aviation. And of course, we talk also about power, all right? Stranded power of almost 8,000 megawatts currently. So can that change between now and year 2030? In which case we're able now to wheel out and distribute the power we have capacity to generate. So all of these are what give me my own view of the outlook. So I see an economy that will grow beyond 5% on the average over this 5-year period. But if those sectoral reforms are deepened, we can do beyond 7% that the Minister of Finance said.
Say that, okay, in 2023, we started out with an economy that was $480 billion in GDP. And in 2025, we have an economy that is $200 billion in GDP. And we can congratulate ourselves for liberalizing foreign exchange, for removing subsidy on fossil fuel that the world is exiting from, that Nigeria is exiting from. A lot of people, we were able to get away with the subsidy removal this time, met with no resistance, as Dr. Kitty would articulate for you, because there are substitutes that were in there in 2012 when everybody jumped to the street. You have solar, and you have other renewables. Even we are told that the seat of government is now trying to migrate to solar. Okay? So, yes, I am the first to commend the central bank for stabilizing unifying the exchange rate, stabilizing and rebuilding the net reserves to above $20 billion. And I'll be the first to congratulate us for restoring GDP growth at the turn of 2025 and for, achieving disinflation. We commend ourselves as we look at the rearview mirror. But in the context of, okay, where would we be in the next 5 years? Whose outlook is Nigeria's outlook? Never mind what the IMF is saying. What are you saying? Every serious company will sit down and do its own strategic plan for the next 5 years. This is their own outlook. It will inform what they will do.
We need to aim at greater access and manageable cost of food. So, if you look at Nigeria today, whether he's a business person that pays salaries, or you look at families, you will see that the price of food is now a big problem, a massive, massive problem. If the top 1% have started to complain about the cost of food, then there is a problem. So we need consistent, effective reforms to deal with food prices, especially in relation to income. We should not be spending 50, 60, 70, and in some cases, some people, their 100% income cannot even buy them food. So that is number one. Number two, we now need to say, okay, what is happening to access and the cost of skills? So you have businesses here, after their staff will complain of the price of food, then they will be wondering what is the productivity growth that they are getting from skills available to them. Not much. So you need to actually improve on that. How do businesses that want to innovate, businesses that are investing, businesses that are trying to compete, whether regionally or internationally, how do they have access to the best skills at as reasonable cost? So that is number two. Number three, if we are going to improve our medium outlook country, and this is also is energy access and the cost of energy. So whether it's in our homes, or whether it's in our offices, or in our factories, what are the costs of energy?
So what type of reforms or policy actions do you need?
So there is a lot that has been done in terms of what we need to do to ease business constraints and so on and so forth. So again, I think it comes back to execution. How do you, what you have documented, the work that you've done, how do you facilitate businesses in terms of execution? Now, the second perspective that I want to bring into the issue is more philosophical. I think sometimes we make a lot of noise about the private sector, private enterprises, and so on and so forth. The truth is that if you look at economies that have done substantially very well in the last 20, 30 years, most especially China, India, maybe Vietnam, Indonesia, the public sector play major roles. And if you don't release the budget, for example, it's difficult for the private sector to be able to anchor their businesses on what the economy is going to look like.
Because if you look at our democracy, when you just go out there, you bring a particular political model, and you adopt it hook, line, and sinker. I'm not sure we are getting the best from this model of democracy. I'm not a fan of military government, so I don't want anybody to invite me after this. But we need to reform our democracy. We are not getting the best from it. And those of us that are the elites, especially in the private sector, I think we need to do a lot more on how, it's a big issue, it's a big subject. I don't know how we are going to go about it, but what I know that this democracy is not giving us the best in terms of the quality of governance. And we need to do something about it. We cannot continue this way. This is halfway into a particular regime. People are already talking about 2027. And this is how it's going to continue, creating all manner of distractions away from governance. It's a major issue that troubles a lot of us. Secondly, and that is to the point of Dr. Oshikoya, it's about defining the limits of the market, defining the limits of what the private sector can do. This is an ideological issue. Because sometimes we get carried away by all this IMF model, private sector can do this, private sector can do that, and we discover that there are some heavy lifting that the private sector cannot do. There are things that are of social benefits, high social returns, high economic returns, but they don't have commercial returns or financial returns. The private sector will not go there.